I can still feel the weight of the silence that followed my mother's question. The grand ballroom of the Westlake Country Club in Portland seemed to shrink around me, the chandelier light casting harsh shadows across the faces of relatives who hadn't bothered to return my calls in over 3 years, even though my office was just 2 blocks from Uncle Rick's law firm. My cousin Megan's voice cut through the awkward pause. "Well, Olivia, are you still doing that little app thing?" She tilted her head with practiced sympathy, her diamond earrings catching the light. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." I'd prepared for this moment since receiving the family reunion invitation, the annual Patterson family gathering, a parade of achievements, promotions, and subtle competitions. Standing there in my simple black dress, the only one I'd packed, that didn't scream tech startup founder. I felt the familiar weight of being the family disappointment. "The app is doing well," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "We're gaining traction." My father snorted softly into his whiskey. "Traction doesn't pay the bills, Liv." I took a slow sip of my sparkling water, thinking about the acquisition paperwork waiting in my hotel room safe. The documents outlining how Tech Forward was purchasing Clarity, my little app thing, for a figure that would make even Uncle Rick's law partnership look like pocket change. But they didn't know that. Not yet. 5 years ago, I'd walked away from a promising position at Goldman Sachs to build a financial literacy platform for underserved communities. I'd traded my corner office for a desk in my apartment, my expense account for ramen noodles, and my family's approval for sleepless nights coding. The app that began as a simple budgeting tool had evolved into a comprehensive AI-powered financial advisor that could predict market trends with startling accuracy. "Traction pays plenty when you have 2 million monthly active users," I said with a slight smile. My mother's perfectly manicured hand patted mine. "Darling, we just worry. These tech startups, they're so unstable." She glanced meaningfully at my cousin Jason, who had recently been promoted to senior vice president at Bank of America. Not everyone can have a normal career trajectory. Normal. The word hung in the air like a judgment. The Patterson family valued predictability above all else: law degrees, medical residencies, banking promotions, measurable, recognizable success. Not the volatile world of startups where failure was considered a badge of honor. Jason leaned forward, his custom suit stretching across his shoulders. "Hey, my department is always looking for good analysts. With your Goldman background, I could probably get you in at a decent level. You know, a real job with benefits." I traced the condensation on my water glass, remembering the call I'd received yesterday from Elena Vasquez, CEO of Tech Forward. "The board has approved the acquisition at full asking price," she'd said. "We'll announce after the paperwork is signed tomorrow." The acquisition that would make me one of the youngest female tech founders to negotiate a 9-figure exit. The deal that would put Clarity's financial tools in the hands of millions more users. The headline that would run in tomorrow's Wall Street Journal. "I appreciate the offer," I said to Jason, "but I'm committed to Clarity." My father sighed, exchanging a look with my mother that I'd seen countless times. Disappointment, confusion. Why would their brilliant daughter with the Wharton MBA choose such an uncertain path? "Committed to what, exactly?" my father asked, his tone carefully measured. "You've been at this for 5 years, Olivia. What do you have to show for it?" Impact, growth, purpose. The words formed in my mind but remained unspoken. They wouldn't understand, not yet, how Clarity had helped thousands of first-generation college students manage debt, how we'd partnered with community organizations in financial deserts, how our algorithm had democratized financial advice once reserved for the wealthy. "I have a team of 26 people who believe in what we're building," I replied instead. 26 people without 401ks, I bet," Uncle Rick chimed in with a chuckle. "When I was your age, I was already a junior partner." I bit back the response that burned on my tongue. Uncle Rick's firm, Patterson, Meyer and Williams, had approached Clarity last year about potential investment, unaware that I was the founder. I'd sat in that meeting under my professional name, Olivia Chen. I'd taken my mother's maiden name professionally to avoid nepotism accusations, and listened as they dismissed our valuation as wildly optimistic. Now our valuation had tripled. My phone buzzed in my clutch. A text from my COO, Dina. Final acquisition docs just arrived. Legal says they look clean. We're ready whenever you are. Need to take that? Megan asked, arching a perfectly shaped eyebrow. Hot date trying to rescue you from family dinner? The table tittered with laughter. At 34, my perpetual singlehood was another favorite family talking point. Who had time to date when building a company? Besides, after tomorrow, I suspected my inbox would be flooded with dinner invitations. Just work, I replied. Always working, my mother sighed. That's the problem with these startups. No work-life balance. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I almost laughed. Rich coming from my father, who'd missed my high school graduation for a client emergency, or Uncle Rick, who'd gone through 2 divorces thanks to his 60-hour work weeks. But in the Patterson family, corporate dedication was commitment. Entrepreneurial dedication was obsession. Speaking of work, Jason said, turning to the table at large, I just closed the Davidson account. Biggest portfolio in the firm's history. He paused for the obligatory congratulations before continuing. Looking at a nice bonus this quarter. Thinking about that lake house in the Berkshires. Another round of approving nods. Tangible success. Real achievement. Meanwhile, I'd poured my savings into server costs and developer salaries, living in a modest 1-bedroom apartment despite my C-suite title. And how are things at the firm, Rick? My father asked, smoothly shifting attention to his brother. Uncle Rick launched into a detailed account of their latest high-profile case, a corporate merger worth billions. Everyone leaned in, hanging on his every word, just like they always did at these gatherings. The Patterson legacy continued. Successful, respected, conventional. I sipped my water and thought about tomorrow's meeting. Elena Vasquez would be flying in personally to sign the papers. Tech Forward wanted not just Clarity's technology, but its founding team. They'd offered me the position of Chief Innovation Officer with full autonomy over my division. It was the perfect exit, financial security plus continued mission impact. We're expanding to the Chicago market next quarter, Uncle Rick was saying, his voice carrying across the table. The Madison Group has retained us exclusively for all their Midwest acquisitions. I didn't blink at the mention of the Madison Group. If only Uncle Rick knew they'd been beta testers for Clarity's enterprise solution, or that their CFO had personally recommended us to Tech Forward. Impressive, I said, and meant it. For all their dismissal of my choices, my family were excellent at what they did. They just couldn't see that excellence might look different for me. Dessert arrived, creme brulee with fresh berries. As the conversation shifted to my cousin Ethan's medical residency, I felt my grandmother's eyes on me from across the table. Unlike the others, Grandma Patterson had never criticized my decision to start Clarity. She'd even been my first angel investor, quietly writing a check for $50,000 when I'd left Goldman. Women need to take more risks, she'd said, having lived through an era when female bankers were still a rarity. You're awfully quiet tonight, Olivia, she observed now, her voice carrying just enough to pause the conversation. Just tired, Grandma. Busy week. She studied me with shrewd eyes that had once intimidated banking executives. You have that look. What look? The same one you had when you announced you were leaving Goldman, like you're carrying a secret. That's about to change everything. The table fell silent. My grandmother had always possessed an uncanny intuition, especially when it came to business matters. She'd built the family's initial wealth through smart real estate investments in the 1970s, laying the groundwork for the professional dynasty that followed. I smiled but said nothing. "Is there something you want to tell us, Olivia?" my mother asked, suddenly alert. For a moment, I considered sharing my news. Imagined the shocked expressions, the sudden reassessment, the inevitable attempts to claim they'd always believed in me. But that wasn't why I'd built Clarity. Not for validation, not for approval, not to prove anything to the Pattersons. "Nothing important," I replied. "Are you sure?" Grandma pressed, her eyes twinkling with something that looked suspiciously like knowledge. "No big announcements? No major changes on the horizon?" I wondered if she'd somehow heard about the acquisition. Grandma still had connections in the financial world, still read the Wall Street Journal daily. "Everything's fine, Grandma," assured her, then checked my watch. "Actually, I should head out. Early meeting tomorrow." "On a Saturday?" My father frowned. "The tech world doesn't follow banking hours, Dad." I stood, smoothing my dress. The dinner had gone exactly as expected. A mixture of condescension, concern, and confusion about my choices. Tomorrow would be different. "Olivia," my mother called as I gathered my clutch. "We're having brunch at the hotel restaurant tomorrow, 11 o'clock. You'll be there?" I hesitated. The signing was scheduled for 9. The press release would go out at 10. By 11, my phone would be exploding with notifications. "I'll try," I said. "Try harder," my father said, his tone softening slightly. "We don't see you enough these days." There was genuine affection beneath his criticism. For all their dismissal of my career choices, the Pattersons were still family. They wanted what they thought was best for me: security, stability, status. They just had a narrow definition of what that looked like. "I'll be there," I promised. As I kissed, cheeks goodbye, Jason caught my arm. "Seriously, Liv, think about what I said. The offer to put in a word at the bank stands. You can't run a startup forever." I smiled. "Thanks, Jason. I'll keep that in mind." Outside, the Portland night was cool and clear, the streets still bustling with weekend energy. I hailed a rideshare, giving the driver the address of my downtown hotel rather than my actual apartment 15 minutes away. Another small deception in a weekend full of them. The Pattersons thought I was staying at the Westin with the rest of the family. In reality, Tech Forward had booked me into the Nines, where tomorrow's signing would take place. As the car wound through downtown Portland, I pulled out my phone and texted Dina. "Everything ready for tomorrow?" Her response came immediately. "All set. Elena's plane lands at 8. Conference room booked for 9. PR team standing by for 10 a.m. release. You ready for this?" Was I ready? 5 years of 18-hour days, dwindling bank accounts, and constant uncertainty had led to this moment. The journey from idea to exit hadn't been smooth. We'd pivoted twice, nearly run out of money 3 times, and weathered a pandemic that threatened to tank everything. There had been nights I'd questioned every decision, mornings I'd woken up, terrified of letting down my team. "Ready as I'll ever be," I typed back. The car pulled up to the Nines, its elegant facade lit up against the night sky. The doorman greeted me by name. I'd been coming and going for meetings all week as we finalized the acquisition details. "Good evening, Ms. Chen. Any bags to bring in?" "No, thank you, James. Just me tonight." In my suite, I kicked off my heels and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere across town, my family was probably still at dinner, perhaps moving on to discussing my cousin's children or Uncle Rick's new summer home. The comfortable, predictable measures of Patterson's success. Meanwhile, I was about to become the kind of success story they couldn't ignore. Not that it mattered. Not really. I hadn't built Clarity for the Pattersons' approval. I'd built it because I'd seen a gap in the market, a need unmet, a problem I could solve. that the solution would soon reach millions more users through tech forwards. Platform was the real victory. My hotel phone rang, the front desk. "Ms. Chen, a package has arrived for you." Minutes later, a bellhop delivered a heavy manila envelope. Inside was the final printed acquisition agreement, hundreds of pages of legal language that boiled down to one essential fact. By this time tomorrow, Clarity would be part of Tech Forward, and I would be $34 million richer, before taxes, with another potential $40 million in performance incentives over the next 3 years. I spread the papers across the desk, the words blurring as fatigue caught up with me. 5 years of work distilled into paragraphs of legalese. 5 years of doubt transformed into an 8-figure validation. My phone buzzed again. A text from my grandmother. "Whatever you're not telling us, I'm proud of you anyway. Always have been." I smiled, typing back. "Thanks, Grandma. See you at brunch tomorrow. It might be interesting." Setting my phone aside, I walked to the minibar and pulled out a small bottle of champagne. I rarely drank, especially before important meetings, but tonight called for an exception. Tomorrow would change everything, not just for me, but for my team, for our users, for the mission we'd built together. I poured the champagne into a hotel glass and raised it in a silent toast to the empty room. Not to the money, not to proving my family wrong, but to persistence. To the vision that had sustained me when the easier path, the Patterson path, had beckoned. The truth was, part of me had always craved their approval. The little girl who'd watched her father close deals, her uncle win cases, her cousins follow. The prescribed paths to success. That girl had wanted to belong in the Patterson pantheon. But the woman I'd become had found a different definition of achievement, one measured in impact rather than accolades. Tomorrow, those two worlds would collide. The acquisition would make headlines. Tech Forward acquires financial AI startup. Clarity in $80 million deal. And the Pattersons would finally see what I'd been building all these years. Not just an app, not just a company, but a new kind of financial institution designed to serve those the traditional system had failed. Would it change how they saw me? Perhaps. Would it matter? I wasn't sure anymore. I set down my glass and returned to the acquisition papers, running my fingers over the signature line where tomorrow I'd write, "Olivia Chen, founder and CEO." Not Patterson. Chen. The name I'd chosen to make my own way. In 12 hours, I'd sign those papers and step into a new chapter. Wealthier, certainly, but more importantly, with the resources to expand Clarity's mission under Tech Forward's umbrella. In 14 hours, the press release would go out, and my phone would explode with congratulations from the tech world and surprised messages from my family. And in 15 hours, I'd walk into the hotel restaurant for brunch, no longer the family. Disappointment but the family headline. But tonight, in the quiet of my hotel room, I was still just Olivia. The girl who'd risked everything on an idea. The woman who'd built something valuable enough that one of the biggest tech companies in the world wanted to buy it. The founder who'd stayed true to her mission even when everyone told her she was wasting her potential. Tomorrow would bring validation in the currency my family understood. Dollars and headlines. But tonight, I already knew the truth. I'd succeeded. On my own terms, Patterson approval or not. I closed the acquisition folder and set it back in the safe. Then I changed into pajamas, set my alarm, and slipped into bed, ready for the most important day of my professional life. As I drifted towards sleep, I imagined my father's face when he saw the news, my mother's surprise, Uncle Rick's reassessment, Jason's shock. And beneath the petty satisfaction of proving them wrong, a more profound hope took shape. That maybe, just maybe, my success might expand their understanding of what achievement could look like. That the next Patterson who wanted to forge an unconventional path might face less resistance. Not that it mattered. I'd make this deal whether they understood it or not. I'd build whatever came next on my own terms. Because sometimes success isn't about living up to your family's expectations. Sometimes it's about redefining them. I woke at 5 a.m., hours before my alarm. The hotel room was still dark, the city outside my window just beginning to stir. Sleep had come and gone in restless waves, my mind too busy planning, anticipating, and occasionally doubting to truly rest. Today was the day, the culmination of 5 years of work, sacrifice, and persistence. I slipped out of bed and padded to the window, pulling back the curtains to watch dawn break over Portland. The sky shifted from indigo to lavender, then bloomed with streaks of pink and gold. Below, early commuters dotted the streets, heading to jobs with predictable hours and regular paychecks, the kind of stability my family had always valued. There had been times when I'd envied that stability, during the months when Clarity's first funding round fell through, and I'd had to let go of 3 developers. During the sleepless weeks spent completely overhauling our algorithm after discovering a critical flaw. During the pandemic when our revenue dropped 60% overnight, and I'd foregone my own salary to keep the rest of the team paid. The Patterson path would have been easier in many ways, more straightforward, more understood, but it wouldn't have been mine. I ordered room service, a pot of strong coffee and avocado toast, and opened my laptop to review my notes for the why. Meeting. TechForward's acquisition offer had come as a surprise 3 months ago. We'd been raising our Series B funding when Elena Vasquez had called personally. "I've been following Clarity since your seed round," she'd said. "What you've built is exactly what our platform has been missing. We want to bring you into the TechForward family." At first, I'd been hesitant. Clarity was more than a business to me. It was a mission. Our users trusted us because we weren't another giant tech company harvesting their data. We'd built that trust carefully, transaction by transaction, piece of advice by piece of advice. But Elena had understood my concerns. TechForward was offering something rare, acquisition without absorption. Clarity would become a division within TechForward, maintaining its brand identity and core mission, while gaining access to TechForward's vast resources and 100 million-strong user base. The potential impact was too significant to ignore. With TechForward's infrastructure, we could scale Clarity's financial literacy tools to underserved communities globally, not just in North America. We could develop features that had been on our roadmap for years but beyond our resource capacity. My phone chimed with a text from Elena. "Just landed. See you at 9. I glanced at the time, 6:30 a.m., still plenty of time to prepare. I showered quickly, then spent longer than usual choosing my outfit. Today called for something different than my usual startup CEO uniform of jeans and a blazer. I selected a tailored charcoal suit with a subtle blue blouse, professional but distinctly my own style, not the banker uniform my family favored. As I applied minimal makeup, I thought about the team that had made this day possible. Dina, who'd left a comfortable position at Microsoft to become Clarity's first employee. Raj, our brilliant lead developer who'd worked double shifts for months during our crucial pivot. Taylor, who'd built our community outreach program from scratch. They'd all taken risks to join Clarity when it was just an idea with angel funding. They'd believed in the mission when most financial institutions had dismissed us as idealistic and unsustainable. Financial advice for people without money? How will that ever generate revenue? One potential investor had scoffed. We'd proven him wrong. By creating an accessible entry point for financial novices, we'd built a pipeline of users who grew with us, from basic budgeting assistance to investment guidance, from debt management to wealth building. As our users' financial situations improved, so did our revenue streams. Now those early team members would receive life-changing payouts from today's acquisition. Dina would finally be able to buy the house she'd been saving for. Raj could pay off his parents' mortgage. Taylor could fund the nonprofit she'd been dreaming about. At 7:30, I headed downstairs to the hotel's business center to print copies of my presentation for the meeting. The acquisition was secure, but I still wanted to outline my vision for Clarity's future within Tech Forward. The elevator doors opened onto the hotel's elegant lobby, already bustling with morning check-ins and business travelers. Olivia? Olivia Patterson? I turned to see Thomas Mercer, a former colleague from Goldman Sachs, striding toward me across the marble floor. Thomas had been 3 levels above me in the hierarchy, known for his cutthroat approach to climbing the corporate ladder. "It's Chen professionally," I corrected automatically. "Hello, Thomas. It's been a while." He looked exactly as I remembered. Expensive suit, perfect haircut, the confident posture of someone who'd never questioned his place in the world. "Chen? Right. I forgot you went with your mother's name for that little startup of yours." He smiled with practiced charm. "What brings you to Portland? Family visit?" "Business meeting," I replied vaguely. "Here at the Nines? Moving up in the world." He chuckled. "Last I heard, you were working out of some co-working space in Seattle. That had been 4 years ago, when Clarity was still finding its footing. We'd since moved into our own offices, expanded to 30 employees, and opened a satellite location in Atlanta." "Things change," I said with a smile. "Well, if you're looking to get back into traditional finance, let me know. My team at Morgan, Stanley is always looking for talent with Goldman pedigree." He handed me a business card. "The startup experience looks good on a resume, shows initiative, but there comes a time to get serious again." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Dina. "Legal team is here. Conference room is set up. Everything's ready." "I appreciate the offer," I told Thomas, pocketing his card without looking at it. "But I'm exactly where I want to be." His smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course. Well, don't be a stranger." As he walked away, I felt a familiar twinge of irritation. The assumption that Clarity was just a detour, a phase to get out of my system before returning to the real world of finance. It was the same assumption my family made, that success had only one legitimate face. The business center was empty, allowing me to print my documents in peace. As the presentation slides emerged from the printer, I felt a surge of pride seeing Clarity's growth. Metrics laid out in crisp charts and graphs. User acquisition up 342% year over year. Revenue increased 278% in the same period. Customer satisfaction scores that dwarfed traditional banks. Numbers that told a story of impact as well as profit. Behind each percentage point were real people, gaining control of their financial futures, often for the first time in their lives. I gathered the warm pages and headed to the conference room on the mezzanine level where we'd be signing the acquisition papers. The room was already prepared. Water pitchers sweating gently on the polished table, notepads and pens at each seat, the Tech Forward logo displayed discreetly on a tablet at the head of the table. Dina was there, reviewing documents with our legal team. She looked up as I entered, her face breaking into a wide smile. "Today's the day," she said, giving me a quick hug. "How are you feeling?" "Surreal," I admitted, "like it hasn't quite hit me yet." "Me neither. I keep thinking someone's going to call and say there was a mistake with the valuation." I laughed. I had that exact nightmare last night. Our lead counsel, Marissa, looked up from her stack of papers. "No mistakes. I've gone through every clause 3 times. This deal is solid, and frankly, impressive. You negotiated terms most founders only dream of." I'd insisted on several non-negotiable points. Clarity would maintain its mission of serving underbanked communities. Our team would stay intact. I would have autonomy to run Clarity as a division within Tech Forward. And perhaps most importantly, our user data would only be shared with explicit consent, never by default. Elena had agreed to all of it, understanding that Clarity's value lay not just in its technology, but in its relationship with users. "We're not buying you to change you," she'd said. "We're buying you because of who you already are." At 8:45, Elena arrived with her team, the Tech Forward CFO, their head of acquisitions, and 2 board members. She greeted me with a warm handshake that turned into a brief hug. "Ready to make history?" she asked. At 48, Elena Vasquez was a legend in the tech world, one of the few Latina women to found and lead a major tech company to IPO. She'd built Tech Forward from a small payments processor into a digital, financial ecosystem that rivaled traditional banks in scope and exceeded them in user experience. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied. "I've been where you are," she said, her voice low enough that only I could hear. "The day I signed my first acquisition, bringing another company under the Tech Forward umbrella, I threw up twice before the meeting." I laughed, surprised by her candor. "I only feel slightly nauseous, so I guess I'm ahead of the curve." "You are," she agreed. "I've never seen a founder as prepared for this moment as you are. You've built something extraordinary, Olivia. Today is just the beginning." We took our seats around the table as the lawyers distributed signature pages and reviewed key terms. Though we'd been through these details dozens of times, protocol demanded one final review before signing. As the Tech Forward CFO outlined the payment structure, the upfront cash, the equity portion, the earn-out terms tied to performance metrics, I found myself thinking not about the numbers, but about the journey. The late nights coding alongside, Raj when we couldn't afford more developers, the investor meetings where older men had explained my own business model back to me, usually incorrectly, the first time a user had written to say Clarity had helped them save enough for a down payment on a home. "Ms. Chen," the lawyer's voice broke through my thoughts. "If you're ready, we'll proceed with the signatures." I picked up the pen, a heavy, expensive one provided by Tech Forward for the occasion. Elena signed first, her signature bold and flowing across the page. Then she slid the document to me. For a brief moment, I hesitated, pen hovering above the paper. 5 years of my life culminating in this single moment of ink on page. I thought of all the people who had told me to take the safer path. My father, suggesting I stay at Goldman. My mother worrying about my retirement savings. Jason offering me a real job just last night. Then I thought of my grandmother's text. "Whatever you're not telling us, I'm proud of you anyway. Always have been." I signed my name, Olivia Chen, on each flagged page, the strokes firm and decisive. "Congratulations," Elena said as I signed the final page. "Clarity is officially part of Tech Forward." The room broke into applause, restrained, but genuine. Champagne appeared, though it was barely 9:30 a.m., and flutes were distributed. Elena raised hers in a toast. To Clarity and Tech Forward, changing the future of finance together. We clinked glasses, and I took a small sip, the bubbles dancing on my tongue. It was happening. It was real. Against all odds and expectations, Clarity had succeeded. As the legal teams packed up documents and the Tech Forward board members made congratulatory small talk, my phone buzzed with a text from our PR director. "Press release going out in 15 minutes. Wall Street Journal already requesting an interview." I checked the time, nearly 10 a.m. In an hour, I was supposed to meet my family for brunch. By then, the news would be public. The acquisition would be making headlines in financial and tech media. My carefully maintained separation between Olivia Patterson of the Portland Pattersons and Olivia Chen, founder and CEO of Clarity, would collapse. "Everything okay?" Elena asked, noticing my distraction. "My family is in town for a reunion," I explained. "They don't exactly know about this yet." Elena's eyebrows rose. "They don't know you were selling your company for $80 million? "They don't know my company was worth $80 million, I clarified. "They think I run a struggling app that helps people budget." Understanding dawned in Elena's eyes. Ah, they're about to be surprised. That's one word for it. She smiled sympathetically. Family can be the hardest to impress. When I started Tech Forward, my father kept asking when I was going to get a stable job like my brothers. even after we raised our Series C funding. He worried I was being irresponsible. When did he finally understand? When we rang the bell at our IPO. She laughed. And even then, he asked if I'd be getting health insurance now. As the meeting wound down, Dina approached with her tablet. The team is gathering at the office to watch the announcement go live. They're asking if you'll video call in for a toast. Absolutely, I said. Our Seattle team deserved to celebrate this moment together, even if I couldn't be there in person. In a quiet corner of the conference room, I connected to a video call. The screen filled with familiar faces. Our entire team crowded into the common area of our office, champagne already flowing despite the early hour. "There she is!" Raj called out. "The woman who made us all rich!" Laughter and cheers erupted. I felt a lump form in my throat, unexpected emotion welling up at the sight of the people who had taken this journey with me. "I didn't make anyone rich," I corrected. "We did this together. Every one of you believed in clarity when it was just an idea. You took a chance on a mission that most people thought was naive at best and financially unsound at worst." The faces on screen grew more serious, listening intently. "Today isn't just about an acquisition or a payout," I continued. "It's about validation of our core belief that financial tools should be accessible to everyone, not just those who already have wealth. That's what Tech Forward is buying. Not just our technology, but our vision. And they're getting a pretty amazing CEO in the bargain," Dina added, raising her glass from beside me. "Chief Innovation Officer now," I corrected, referring to my new title within Tech Forward. "Still our fearless leader," Taylor called from the back of the group. We toasted together, the distance between Portland and Seattle disappearing in our shared celebration. As I ended the call, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Whatever happened with my family at brunch, I already had a community that understood the value of what we'd built. Elena approached as I set down my phone. "Your team seems wonderful." "They are," I agreed. "The best decision I ever made was hiring people who believed in the mission as much as I did." "That's the secret most founders miss," she said. "They hire for skills when they should hire for passion. Skills can be learned. Belief in the mission can't be taught." We walked together toward the elevator. The acquisition meeting officially concluded. In the lobby, Elena paused. "I know we have follow-up meetings scheduled for next week in Seattle, but take a few days to celebrate this milestone," she said. "Acquisitions are emotional, even good ones. Give yourself time to process." "I will," I promised, "right after I survive family brunch." She laughed. "Good luck with that. And Olivia? Remember something I wish someone had told me. You don't need their validation anymore. You've already proven yourself in ways they might never fully understand." As she walked away, I checked the time. 10:30 a.m. The press release had gone live. I pulled out my phone to check the coverage and immediately saw notifications flooding in. LinkedIn congratulations, text messages from industry colleagues, emails from former investors, and buried among them, a message from my father. "Call me immediately." So they knew. The news had reached the Pattersons. I took a deep breath and headed to the elevator, preparing myself for brunch. The truth was, despite all my professional confidence, part of me was still that little girl who had sought her father's approval, who had tried to make her mother proud, who had wanted to belong in the Patterson legacy. But as the elevator carried me upward to my room, where I would change for brunch, I realized Elena was right. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had validated myself, through persistence, through vision, through building something that made a difference in people's lives. Whatever happened at 11 o'clock, I would walk into that restaurant not as the family disappointment, but as exactly who I was. Olivia Chen, founder and CEO of Clarity, newly acquired by Tech Forward for $80 million. And if the Pattersons couldn't celebrate that, it would be their loss, not mine. I stood outside the hotel restaurant, my hand resting on the polished wooden door. Through the glass, I could see my family already gathered around a large table near the window. Mother checking her watch, father scanning his phone with furrowed brows, Uncle Rick gesturing animatedly as he told some story, cousins laughing. Politely, the perfect Patterson tableau. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the press release went live. TechCrunch had already published their analysis of the acquisition. The Wall Street Journal had requested an interview. Former colleagues were sending congratulations. Current team members were sharing celebratory selfies from our Seattle office. And my father had called 3 times, each call sent to voicemail as I prepared myself for this moment. I smoothed the front of my dress. I'd changed from the business suit into something more casual but still polished, and pushed open the door. The restaurant hummed with weekend brunch energy, glasses clinking and conversations flowing around, tables of families and friends. But as I approached the Patterson table, a strange hush fell over my relatives. All eyes turned to me. My father stood abruptly, his napkin falling forgotten to the floor. "Olivia," he said, his voice carrying a note I'd never heard before. Confusion, shock, perhaps even awe. "What is the meaning of this?" He held up his phone, displaying the headline that had shattered their perception of my career. Tech Forward acquires AI financial startup Clarity for 80 Mailwatters. Founder Olivia Chen to head new division. I took a deep breath and smiled. "Good morning to you too, Dad. Looks like you've seen the news." "Is it true?" my mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Olivia, is this real?" "Every word," I confirmed, pulling out the empty chair beside my grandmother, who was watching the scene unfold with twinkling eyes and a barely suppressed smile. Uncle Rick sputtered, his mimosa forgotten. But you're a Patterson. Why does it say Chen, and how on earth did you—" "I've been using Mom's maiden name professionally since I left Goldman," I explained, signaling to a waiter for coffee. "And yes, I just sold my company to Tech Forward for $80 million, plus performance incentives." The table erupted in overlapping exclamations and questions. $80 million? Your little budgeting app? Why didn't you tell us? I don't understand. My grandmother patted my hand under the table, a silent gesture of solidarity amid the chaos. She'd known, or at least suspected, that something significant was happening. Unlike the rest of the family, she'd actually downloaded Clarity, followed our press coverage, and occasionally sent thoughtful questions about our business model. "Perhaps," she suggested, her calm voice cutting through the commotion, "we might let Olivia explain before bombarding her with questions." The table fell silent again. My father slowly sank back into his chair, his expression a complex mixture of emotions I couldn't fully decipher. Pride, bewilderment, perhaps even a touch of hurt. "You're right, Mother," he said finally. "Olivia, please, tell us what's going on." I accepted a cup of coffee from the waiter and took a fortifying sip before beginning. 5 years ago, I left Goldman Sachs to start Clarity, I said. Not on a whim, as you all seem to think, but because I saw a gap in the market. Traditional, financial institutions serve people who already have money. They ignore or penalize those who don't. I wanted to build something different, technology that could democratize financial advice and tools. "But your career was so promising," my mother interjected. "You were on the fast track." "To what end, Mom? To make wealthy clients wealthier? To climb a corporate ladder whose top rungs were still overwhelmingly occupied by men who looked nothing like me? I wanted to build something meaningful." Jason leaned forward, his banker's mind already calculating. $80 million, he repeated. "Split among how many founders?" "Just me," I said. "I'm the sole founder. My team has equity, of course, but I maintained majority ownership through all our funding rounds." His eyes widened. So you personally— Yes, I confirmed, not needing him to finish the question. After taxes and distributing the team's shares, I'll clear about $34 million, plus potential earnouts. The table fell silent as the number sank in. $34 million. More than Uncle Rick's entire net worth. More than my father had accumulated in his 40-year banking career. More than Jason would likely earn in his lifetime at Bank of America. But why the secrecy? My father asked finally, his voice softer now. Why not tell your family? I met his gaze directly. Would you have believed me if I had? When I tried to explain Clarity's potential in the beginning, you called it a hobby. When I talked about our first round of funding, you asked when. I was coming back to the real world. When I mentioned our user growth, you worried about my retirement savings. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. We were concerned about you, Olivia. Startups are risky. Most fail. I know the statistics, Dad. I also knew Clarity wouldn't be one of them. But convincing you would have taken energy I needed to build the company. So all this time, Megan said slowly, while we thought you were struggling with some little app, you were actually building a financial technology platform that now serves over 2 million users, has raised $23 million in venture capital across 3 rounds, and employs 36 people. I finished for her. Yes. Uncle Rick shook his head in disbelief. But you never said anything, not even when I was talking about the Patterson group last night. I smiled slightly. The Patterson group has been using Clarity's enterprise solution for the past 18 months. Their CFO was one of our references for the tech-forward acquisition. The looks on their faces might have been comical if they weren't so genuinely shocked. My family, who prided themselves on being connected and informed in the business world, had completely missed my rise in the very industry they claimed to understand. I still don't understand the name change, my father said. Why Chen? You're a Patterson. Because I wanted to succeed or fail on my own merits, I explained. Not because of or despite the Patterson name. In tech, being a woman founder is already challenging enough. I didn't want the added pressure of representing a family legacy. But that legacy is part of who you are, he insisted. The Patterson connections, the reputation— Dad, I interrupted gently. Those connections didn't build Clarity. Those connections didn't believe in what I was doing. When I approached Patterson, Meyer and Williams about potential investment, 2 years ago, they dismissed our valuation as wildly optimistic. They didn't even recognize me in the meeting. Uncle Rick's face flushed. That was you? The financial literacy platform? But the founder was Olivia Chen, I confirmed. Me? A waiter approached, tactfully inquiring if we were ready to order. My mother, always the perfect hostess even in moments of family drama, smoothly ordered for the table, her social training overriding her shock. As the waiter departed, Grandma Patterson spoke up. I think what your father is trying to ask, Olivia, is why you felt you couldn't share your successes with the people who love you. Her question, unlike the others, held no judgment, only genuine curiosity. It deserved an honest answer. Because success in our family has always had a very specific definition, I said carefully. Law partnerships, banking promotions, medical residencies, concrete, recognizable achievements on established paths. What I was building didn't fit that template. That's not fair, my mother protested. We've always supported your choices. You tolerated them, Mom. There's a difference. You tolerated my phase of entrepreneurship while waiting for me to come to my senses and return to traditional finance. We were worried, she insisted. Those early years you were working constantly, taking no salary, living in that tiny apartment, making sacrifices for something I believed in, I completed her thought. The same way Dad worked 80-hour weeks to make Partner, or Uncle Rick missed family events for big cases. The difference was, your sacrifices were understood and valued. Mine were seen as poor judgment. A silence fell over the table as my words sank in. For perhaps the first time, my family was seeing me not as the wayward daughter who had abandoned a promising career, but as someone who had forged her own path to extraordinary success. Jason broke the silence, leaning forward with newfound respect in his eyes. So what happens now? You said you're joining Tech Forward as, what was it? Chief Innovation Officer, I supplied. I'll be leading Clarity as a division within Tech Forward, with resources to expand our mission globally. And you negotiated this position as part of the acquisition? Uncle Rick asked, his legal mind engaging with the business details rather than family dynamics. Yes, along with autonomy over Clarity's direction, protection for our user data policies, and retention packages for my entire team. He nodded, clearly impressed despite himself. That's quite a deal. Olivia has always been a Patterson. When it comes to negotiations, Grandma said proudly, even when she was 10, selling Girl Scout cookies, she could outsell the entire troop. A ripple of laughter broke the tension. For a moment, I was just Olivia again, the determined little girl they all remembered, not the CEO who had just made headlines. I still can't believe it, my father said, shaking his head. My daughter, a multimillionaire tech founder, and I had no idea. Would it have changed anything if you had known? I asked. He considered the question seriously. I'd like to think it would have. That I would have seen what you were building and recognized its value. But that's just it, Dad. I needed to build it first, to prove its value in the market, not in the family court of opinion. The waiter returned with our food, creating a natural pause in the conversation. As we began to eat, the initial shock gradually gave way to curiosity. One by one, my family members began asking more substantive questions about Clarity, how it worked, who our users were, why Tech Forward had been interested in acquiring us. For the first time, I found myself freely sharing the details of my professional life with my family. I explained our AI-driven financial coaching system, our partnership with community banks, our special programs for first-generation college students. That's why you were always so busy, my mother realized. All those holidays you couldn't make, the family gatherings you left early. I was building a company, Mom, from the ground up. That doesn't leave much room for long weekends in the Hamptons. And now? She asked. Now that you've sold the company, will you have more time for family? The question revealed so much about her perspective, as if my career had been an obstacle to real life rather than an integral part of. I haven't sold to retire, Mom. I've sold to scale. The work is just beginning. Tech Forward gives Clarity the platform to reach hundreds of millions of users worldwide. But surely with your new wealth you could take some time off, she pressed. Maybe buy a place of your own. Think about settling down? I exchanged a glance with my grandmother, who rolled her eyes slightly at the predictable pivot to my personal life. Actually, I said, I already own my apartment building in Seattle. I bought it 2 years ago when our Series B closed. And as for settling down, I love my life exactly as it is. Another round of surprised looks. The revelations just kept coming. You own real estate, but you never mentioned, my father began. There's a lot I haven't mentioned, I said simply. My life hasn't been on hold while I built Clarity, Dad. It's been full and rewarding on my own terms. I think what we're all trying to understand, Uncle Rick said, lawyer-like in his precision, is why you felt you needed to keep these successes hidden from your family. I considered his question carefully, wanting to be honest without being unnecessarily hurtful. Because every time I did share something about Clarity, it was diminished, I said finally. When we hit our first 1,000 users, I mentioned it at Christmas, and Jason asked if I was still looking for real jobs. When we raised our seed round, Dad worried it would leave a gap on my resume. When we were featured in Forbes's 30 Under. 30? Mom asked if the publicity might make it harder to transition back to banking. My relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances, recognizing the truth in my words. After a while, it was easier to keep my worlds separate, to be Olivia Patterson at family gatherings and Olivia Chen everywhere else. "I'm sorry," my father said suddenly, the words seeming to surprise even him. "I'm sorry we didn't see what you were building, that we measured your choices against our own limited definitions of success." His apology, unexpected and genuine, caught me off guard. In all my mental rehearsals for this moment, I hadn't anticipated contrition. "We were wrong," he continued. "Clearly, spectacularly wrong. What you've built is extraordinary, Olivia. Not just the financial success, but the vision behind it. We should have trusted your judgment more. We should have asked better questions," my mother added softly. "Instead of worrying about what you weren't doing, we should have been curious about what you were creating." The brunch I had dreaded was transforming into something I hadn't allowed myself to hope for. A moment of real understanding, perhaps even the beginning of a new kind of relationship with my family. "It's not too late," I said, surprising myself with the words. "Clarity is just beginning its next chapter. There's still plenty of story left to share." Jason raised his mimosa glass. "To Olivia, the most successful Patterson in the room, even if she doesn't use the name professionally." "To Olivia," the table echoed, glasses raising in a gesture that would have seemed impossible 24 hours earlier. As we continued with brunch, the conversation gradually shifted to more normal family topics: Cousin Ethan's residency, Megan's children, Uncle Rick's new summer home. But there was a difference now. I was no longer the family member to be worried over or offered career advice. I had earned a new place in the Patterson hierarchy, not by following their prescribed path, but by blazing my own. As coffee was served, my phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "How's the family brunch going? Ready to escape yet?" I glanced around the table at my relatives, now animatedly discussing the possibilities of Clarity's technology. My father was explaining my business model to Uncle Rick with surprising accuracy. My mother was scrolling through the Clarity website on her phone. Grandma was quietly watching me, a knowing smile playing at her lips. "Better than expected," I texted back. "They're starting to get it." "Told you," came Elena's reply. "Success speaks a universal language." She was right. The Pattersons understood success, even if it came in an unexpected package. They might never fully grasp the mission that drove me, the vision of financial equality that had sustained me through the hardest moments of building Clarity. But they could recognize achievement, even when it didn't follow their formula. As brunch wound down, my father pulled me aside near the restaurant entrance. "I want you to know something," he said, his voice uncharacteristically emotional. "I've always been proud of you, Olivia. Even when I didn't understand your choices, I never doubted your brilliance. I just worried." "I know, Dad. But I worried about the wrong things," he continued. "I worried about stability when I should have recognized vision. I worried about convention when I should have celebrated innovation." He paused, searching for the right words. "The truth is, you've achieved something none of the rest of us have. We succeeded within existing systems. You've created an entirely new one." Coming from my father, the embodiment of traditional financial success, these words carried profound weight. For the first time, he wasn't measuring me against the Patterson yardstick. He was acknowledging that I had created my own measure, entirely. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot." As my family dispersed after brunch, Jason to a golf game, Megan to her children's soccer match, my parents and Uncle Rick to some Patterson Family Foundation meeting, I found myself alone with my grandmother in the hotel lobby. You knew, didn't you? I asked her. All along. She smiled enigmatically. I knew you were building something significant. I've been following Clarity since you launched. Quite an impressive platform, especially for those of us navigating retirement finances. Why didn't you say anything to the others? It wasn't my story to tell, she said simply. You had your reasons for keeping your world separate. I respected that choice. She adjusted her scarf with the elegant efficiency that had characterized her entire life. Besides, she added, I rather enjoyed watching them underestimate you. I knew the day would come when they'd have to recognize what you've accomplished. And did it live up to your expectations? I asked with a smile. Oh, my dear, she laughed. It exceeded them. The looks on their faces when you confirmed. That headline? I wish I'd had a camera. We laughed together, co-conspirators in the grand revelation. What will you do now? She asked. Now that your two worlds have collided? I considered her question. The careful separation I'd maintained between Olivia Patterson and Olivia Chen had dissolved today. There was no going back to the comfortable compartmentalization of before. I think, I said slowly, it's time to integrate my lives, to be fully myself in all contexts. Good, she said approvingly. Divided energy is wasted energy, and you have important work ahead of you. She was right. The acquisition wasn't an endpoint but a beginning. With TechForward's resources behind Clarity, we could expand our mission in ways I'd only dreamed of before. There were new markets to enter, new features to develop, new communities to serve. And perhaps now, I could pursue that mission as my complete self, the Patterson determination and Chen innovation fully aligned rather than artificially separated. You've always been my inspiration, you know, I told my grandmother, the original family rebel. She smiled at that. In the 1960s, she'd been one of the first women to work in investment banking, facing discrimination and doubt at every turn. She'd built her own fortune through shrewd investments when most women weren't even allowed to have their own credit cards. The difference is, she said, I had to work within the system. You're changing it entirely. She squeezed my hand. And that, my dear, is the truest form of success. Not just climbing the ladder, but building a better one for others to follow. As we parted ways in the lobby, she to join the rest of the family, me to return to my hotel room for a video call with my team, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of maintaining separate identities, of tempering my achievements around my family, had finally lifted. Tomorrow, I would return to Seattle as Olivia Chen, the newly minted Chief Innovation Officer of TechForward's Clarity Division. But I would carry with me something I hadn't expected from this weekend, a newfound integration of my personal and professional identities, and perhaps even the beginning of a more authentic relationship with my family. The Pattersons might never fully understand the mission that drove me, but they had finally recognized the success that had resulted from it. And for now, that was enough. 3 months after the acquisition, I stood at the window of my new office in the TechForward Seattle headquarters, watching the autumn rain trace patterns on the glass. The view stretched across Elliott Bay to the Olympic Mountains beyond, currently shrouded in fog. The space reflected my new professional reality. Larger, more sophisticated, but still distinctly mine, with Clarity's logo prominently displayed alongside TechForward's on the brushed metal door. On my desk sat a framed article from the wall, Street Journal with the headline that had changed everything. TechForward acquires financial AI startup Clarity in $80 million deal. Founder Olivia Chen to head new division. Beside it stood a new addition, a family photo from last weekend's dinner at my parents' home, the first time I'd hosted the Pattersons since the acquisition news broke. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of transitions, integrating Clarity's systems with TechForward's infrastructure, introducing our teams, mapping out our expanded roadmap, and navigating my new role as Chief Innovation Officer. But perhaps the most surprising transition had been with my family. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Just saw the feature on Bloomberg about Clarity's expansion plans. Impressive strategy. Let's discuss over dinner this week. I smiled at the message. This was the new normal. My father engaging with my work as a peer rather than a concerned parent. Since the revelation at brunch, he'd transformed from my biggest doubter to my most avid follower, reading everything published about Clarity and Tech Forward, asking thoughtful questions about our business model, even downloading our app and providing detailed user feedback. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Elena Vasquez entered, elegant as always in a tailored suit, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. "Ready for the big announcement?" she asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. Today was significant. The unveiling of Clarity's global expansion, the first major initiative since the acquisition. We would be launching in 12 new countries, bringing financial literacy tools to regions where traditional banking was either inaccessible or prohibitively expensive. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, closing my laptop. "The team has done incredible work getting the localization finished ahead of schedule." "That's what impresses me most about your operation," Elena said. "The technical excellence is expected. It's why we acquired you. But the culture you've built, the way your team moves with such unified purpose, that's rare." Her words touched on something I'd been reflecting on lately, how Clarity's success wasn't just about our technology or business model, but about the values that had guided every decision since our founding. "I had an unfair advantage," I said. "From day one, we were building against the grain. Everyone who joined knew they were signing up for something different. That creates a natural filter. Only those who truly believe in the mission stick around." "Speaking of building against the grain," Elena said, sliding a tablet across my desk, "have you seen the latest application numbers?" I scrolled through the data, my eyes widening. Since the acquisition and subsequent publicity, applications for positions at Clarity had increased tenfold, but the demographic breakdown was what caught my attention. Over 60% of applicants were women, and more than half came from backgrounds traditionally underrepresented in fintech. "This is incredible," I said. "We're attracting exactly the diverse perspectives we need to serve our global user base." "You've become a beacon," Elena observed. "Not just for users seeking financial guidance, but for talent seeking purpose-driven work. Your story is pulling people in." My story, the journey, from Patterson family disappointment to fintech pioneer, had certainly captured media attention. I'd reluctantly agreed to profiles in several business publications, initially concerned they would distract from Clarity's mission. But Elena had convinced me that personal narratives could amplify our impact. "By showing your path," she'd argued, "you're creating a roadmap for others who don't see themselves in traditional success stories." She'd been right. The articles had triggered an avalanche of messages from young entrepreneurs, especially women, who saw their own struggles reflected in my experience of building against expectations. "I wanted to discuss something else before the announcement," Elena said, bringing me back to the present. "The board has approved our proposal for the Clarity Foundation. This was the initiative I was most excited about, a nonprofit arm that would extend Clarity's financial literacy tools to organizations serving the most vulnerable populations. Domestic violence survivors rebuilding their financial independence, refugees establishing credit in new countries, formerly incarcerated, individuals re-entering the economic system." "That's fantastic news," I said, unable to contain my enthusiasm. "When can we begin implementation?" "Immediately. With the initial funding approved, we can start approaching partner organizations next month." She paused, studying me with her characteristic intensity. "The board was particularly impressed by your decision to allocate 10% of your earnout to seed the foundation." I shrugged slightly. "It makes sense to invest in expanding our impact. Financial stability shouldn't be a luxury good. Most founders in your position would be buying islands or funding space tourism," Elena noted wryly. I already have more than I need, I said truthfully. The initial acquisition payment had allowed me to secure my own financial future while also helping my team realize theirs. Dina had bought her dream house. Raj had paid off his parents' mortgage and established college funds for his nieces and nephews. Taylor had launched the community arts nonprofit she'd been planning for years. The wealth beyond that, the future earnouts, the tech-forward equity, felt like a responsibility more than a reward, a tool for expanding our mission, rather than enriching my lifestyle. Which brings me to something else, Elena said, her tone shifting subtly. The MIT invitation. Last week, I'd received an unexpected email from my alma mater, inviting me to establish an endowed scholarship for women in fintech. The amount they sought was substantial, $5 million, but well within my new means. I'm still considering it, I admitted. It's a significant commitment. But one aligned with your values, Elena observed, creating pathways for others who might face the same obstacles you did. She was right. My journey would have been dramatically different without my education, and yet many brilliant young women never got that foundation due to financial constraints or lack of encouragement. I'll make the call today, I decided. The Patterson Chen scholarship has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Elena smiled approvingly. Embracing both sides of your identity. I like it. Her comment touched on a personal evolution that had paralleled Clarity's growth since the acquisition. I was no longer compartmentalizing my life, Olivia Patterson in family contexts, Olivia Chen professionally. I was integrating these identities, drawing strength from both my family legacy and my individual path. We should head to the announcement, Elena said, checking her watch. The global team is already gathering in the conference center. Together, we walked through Tech Forward's sleek headquarters toward the glass-walled auditorium where hundreds of employees, both in person and via video conference from offices around the world, waited for our presentation. As we approached, I spotted a familiar figure waiting in the corridor, my grandmother, elegant as always in a tailored blazer, her silver hair perfectly styled. "Grandma!" I exclaimed, surprised and delighted. "What are you doing here?" "Elena invited me," she said, embracing me warmly. "Said I might enjoy seeing my investment in action." I looked questioningly at Elena, who smiled. "Your grandmother mentioned she was your first investor. I thought she deserved a front-row seat for this milestone." "First and best investment I ever made," Grandma said proudly. "Though I must say the return has exceeded even my optimistic projections." The three of us shared a laugh. 3 generations of women who had each, in their own way, challenged the financial establishment. The rest of the family wanted to come too," Grandma added. "But I told them this was business, not a Patterson field trip. Your father was particularly disappointed." "He's become Clarity's biggest cheerleader," I acknowledged with a smile. "Sends me user feedback almost daily." "He's making up for lost time," Grandma said simply. "We all are, in our way." As we entered the auditorium, a hush fell over the assembled crowd. Hundreds of faces turned toward us, employees from Tech Forward and Clarity, press representatives, industry partners. On large screens around the room, team members from global offices watched via video conference. Elena took the stage first, outlining Tech Forward's vision for financial inclusion and how Clarity's acquisition fit into that broader mission. Then she introduced me, stepping aside as applause filled the room. Standing at the podium, looking out at the merged teams that would carry our vision forward, I felt a profound sense of alignment between my personal values and professional work, between Clarity's original mission and its expanded future with Tech Forward, between my Patterson roots and Chen innovations. 3 years ago, I began. I wrote a mission statement for Clarity. It was just 4 of us then, working out of a co-working space, running on hope and caffeine. A ripple of knowing laughter spread through the audience. That mission was simple but ambitious: to democratize financial guidance, to to put the same quality of financial advice that had previously been available only to the wealthy into the hands of everyone. I gestured to the screens displaying Clarity's interface translated into 12 new languages. Today, we take a major step toward fulfilling that mission globally. With TechForward's infrastructure and reach, Clarity's tools will now be available in regions where traditional banking has failed to serve local needs. From rural communities in Southeast Asia to urban centers in Latin America, from refugee settlements to remote villages, financial literacy will no longer be a privilege for the few, but a right for all. The audience broke into applause. In the front row, I saw my grandmother beaming with pride. Beside her, Dina and several other original Clarity team members watched with tears in their eyes, remembering how far we'd come from our humble beginnings. But this expansion isn't just about technology, I continued when the applause subsided. It's about empowerment. Financial stability is the foundation upon which people build their dreams: education, home ownership, entrepreneurship, security, for their families. By making these tools accessible to all, we're not just changing banking, we're changing lives. As I outlined the specifics of our expansion, the new features, the localization adaptations, the community partnerships, I felt the same sense of purpose that had driven me to leave Goldman Sachs 5 years ago. The scale had changed dramatically, but the core mission remained constant: to build financial systems that served human needs rather than exploiting human vulnerabilities. After the formal presentation, as team members mingled and media representatives gathered for interviews, my grandmother approached with a thoughtful expression. "You remind me of myself at your age," she said, "but with one crucial advantage: you're not alone in your vision. I had to fight every step of the way, usually as the only woman in the room. You've built a community around your mission." She gestured toward the diverse group of Clarity team members nearby, engaged in animated conversations with their tech-forward counterparts. "That's the true measure of your success, Olivia. Not the acquisition price, impressive as it is, but the movement you've created. The people who've joined your journey not for profit, but for purpose." Her perspective struck me deeply. In all, the metrics we tracked at Clarity, user growth, engagement rates, revenue, we'd never explicitly measured this aspect: the community of aligned minds we'd assembled, both within our team and among our users. "I never thought of it that way," I admitted. "Most founders don't," she said wisely. "They're too focused on building their company to notice they're building a movement. But movements outlast companies. They continue even when business models evolve." Her words resonated with something I'd been feeling since the acquisition: that Clarity had grown beyond me, beyond our original team, beyond even our technology. It had become a philosophy about financial empowerment that would continue regardless of what platform delivered it. Elena joined us, champagne flutes in hand. "A toast," she suggested, "to breaking barriers, financial, technological, and personal." We clinked glasses, 3 women representing different eras of female leadership in finance, united by a shared commitment to transformation. "I have news," Elena said after we'd sipped our champagne. "The board has approved your nomination to join TechForward's executive committee." This was unexpected. The executive committee shaped TechForward's overall strategy, not just for individual divisions like Clarity. "That's significant," I said, processing the implications. "Thank you for the confidence." "It's not about confidence," Elena corrected. "It's about perspective. Your approach to building Clarity, the emphasis on inclusion, on serving underrepresented communities, on ethical data practices, these are values the entire organization can learn from." My grandmother nodded approvingly. "Influence multiplies impact. From this position, you can shape not just your division but the entire industry." The weight of this new responsibility settled on my shoulders, not as a burden, but as a natural evolution of the path I'd been on since leaving Goldman. Each step had expanded my sphere of influence, from individual clients to app users to financial institutions, and now to industry-wide policy. After the event concluded, I found myself back in my office with Dina, reviewing the media coverage of our announcement. The early headlines were promising, focusing on the global impact rather than just the business metrics. "Remember when we used to celebrate getting 50 new users in a day?" Dina asked, scrolling through the analytics showing thousands of downloads in the newly launched regions just hours after the announcement. I kept a whiteboard tally, I recalled, smiling at the memory. We'd add a mark for each new sign-up, like we were counting endangered species sightings. And now look at us. She gestured to the real-time dashboard showing user activity across the globe. Dots of light representing people engaging with Clarity's tools from Mumbai to Mexico City, from Lagos to London. "It's surreal," I acknowledged. "Sometimes I still feel like that nervous founder pitching to skeptical investors, trying to convince them that financial literacy could be both impactful and profitable." "Speaking of investors," Dina said, "I saw your grandmother at the announcement. She seemed incredibly proud." "She was my first believer," I said. "When everyone else thought I was throwing away my career, she wrote a check and told me to build something meaningful." "She saw what the others couldn't," Dina observed. "Just like you saw potential in me when other companies wouldn't hire a former teacher for a fintech startup." Her comment highlighted another aspect of Clarity's success: our willingness to look beyond traditional credentials, to value diverse experiences and perspectives. Dina had transitioned from education to tech, bringing invaluable insights about how people learn and adopt new behaviors. That knowledge had shaped Clarity's user experience, making complex financial concepts accessible to novices. "We built differently because we built with different pieces," I said, the insight crystallizing as I spoke. "Traditional finance is homogeneous, similar backgrounds, similar training, similar perspectives. We deliberately sought diversity, not as a checkbox exercise, but as a strategic advantage." My phone buzzed with a calendar alert, a reminder for my weekly call with Jason. This was another post-acquisition development that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. My cousin Jason, the banking VP who had once offered me a real job, now sought my advice on incorporating more innovative approaches in his division. "I should take this," I told Dina. "It's Jason." She raised an eyebrow, still unused to my family's transformation from skeptics to supporters. "Investment. Banking Jason? The one who thought Clarity was a cute hobby?" "The very same, though he's evolving," I defended him. "He's implementing some of our financial literacy modules for his clients' children. Baby steps, but in the right direction." After Dina left, I connected the video call. Jason appeared on screen, his usual power suit replaced by a casual button-down. He was working from home today. "Liv, just watched the expansion announcement. Incredible reach," he greeted me. "You're really changing the game." "Thanks, Jason. It's been an intense few months, but seeing the global launch come together makes it all worthwhile." "I've been thinking about what you said at our last dinner," he continued, surprising me with his thoughtfulness. "About how traditional banking ignores the needs of most potential customers. It's been eye-opening." This was new territory for us, Jason acknowledging perspectives outside the conventional banking mindset he'd been steeped in since business school. "I've started analyzing our client demographics," he continued, "and the numbers are stark. We're serving the same narrow slice of society we always have, just shuffling wealth between established players rather than creating pathways for new participants." "That's a significant realization," I said, genuinely impressed by his self-reflection. "I'm presenting some ideas to our executive team next month, ways we might adapt some of Clarity's approaches for our market segment. Would you be willing to review my proposal? Give me your unfiltered feedback." The irony wasn't lost on me. My cousin, who had once patronizingly offered me a real job, now sought my professional guidance. but there was no satisfaction in the eye. Role reversal, only appreciation for his growth. "I'd be happy to," I told him sincerely. That's how change happens in established institutions, from the inside, one advocate at a time. After our call, I stood again at my office window, watching the late afternoon light break through the clouds, casting golden reflections on the bay. 3 months ago, I had dreaded my family discovering my professional success, fearing their judgment, or, perhaps worse, their sudden approval based solely on financial metrics rather than mission. Instead, something more nuanced had emerged, a gradual, sometimes awkward, but ultimately genuine appreciation for the work itself, not just its monetary value. My father researching financial inclusion initiatives, my mother volunteering with a women's financial literacy program, Jason questioning his bank's limited demographic focus. Small shifts, perhaps, but meaningful ones. My intercom buzzed, my assistant reminding me of the mentoring session I'd scheduled with young female founders from Tech Forward's incubator program. Gathering my notes, I reflected on how different my own journey might have been with such support, with role models who had navigated the specific challenges of being a woman in fintech, of pursuing unconventional paths despite family expectations. As I headed toward the meeting room where 5 ambitious young entrepreneurs waited, I thought about the ripple effects of our choices, how building clarity had not only created a valuable product, but had also created space for others to imagine different possibilities for themselves. Perhaps that was the most meaningful measure of success, not the acquisition price or user metrics or media coverage, but the pathways opened for others. The permission granted to pursue purpose alongside profit. The expansion of what success could look like beyond narrow prescribed routes. Entering the room, I was greeted by eager faces, women of diverse backgrounds united by their determination to build technologies that addressed real human needs. As I began sharing Clarity's journey, the setbacks and pivots, the doubts and breakthroughs, I realized I was no longer telling just my story. I was telling our story, the collective narrative of those who choose to build against the grain, who persist despite doubt, who measure success not by external validation, but by lives changed. A story still unfolding, with chapters yet to be written by these founders and countless others who would follow their own unconventional paths. And in that moment, surrounded by the next generation of innovators, I understood the truth that had been evolving since that revealing family brunch. Success isn't found in headlines or acquisition announcements or even family approval. It's found in alignment. When your work reflects your values, when your impact outlasts your involvement, when your journey creates possibilities for others to forge their own paths. That kind of success can't be mocked at a family reunion or validated by a newspaper headline. It simply exists, quiet but undeniable, in the lives touched, and the systems changed, and the perspectives shifted. And it continues, building momentum with each person who dares to define achievement on their own terms, regardless of who believes in them at the start. 6 months after Clarity's global launch, I stood on the stage of my alma mater, facing a packed auditorium of computer science and business students. Behind me, a large screen displayed the words, "The Patterson Chen Scholarship for Women in Financial Technology," alongside Clarity's logo. "Success is rarely a straight line," I began, my voice carrying across the hushed room. "We're conditioned to believe that achievement follows a predictable path, the right degree, the right first job, the right promotions at the right intervals. But innovation, by definition, requires deviation. It demands that we question established routes and find the courage to forge new ones." In the front row sat my family, not just my parents and grandmother, but Uncle Rick, cousins Jason and Megan, even distant relatives who had once barely acknowledged my career. Their presence represented a full-circle moment in my journey, from family outlier to celebrated entrepreneur. 5 years ago, when I left my prestigious banking job to start Clarity, almost everyone thought I was making a terrible mistake. I continued, making brief eye contact with my father, who nodded, with a rueful smile. One senior colleague told me I was throwing away real success for a fantasy. What he failed to understand was that I wasn't rejecting success, I was redefining it. I advanced the slide to show Clarity's impact metrics. 9 million users. Worldwide, 63% of whom had never previously accessed financial planning tools. Average debt reduction of 27% among active users. Savings increases of 42% over traditional banking customers. These numbers represent real human lives transformed. I explained. Students managing loans more effectively. Families building first-time savings. Entrepreneurs accessing capital previously denied to them. This is success measured not by personal wealth accumulation, but by wealth distribution, by expanding access to financial knowledge and tools that were once reserved for the privileged few. As I outlined the scholarship program, which would fully fund 5 women annually through both undergraduate and graduate studies in fintech-related fields, I reflected on how my own definition of success had evolved since the acquisition. The initial validation had been sweet, certainly. Proving doubters wrong carried a particular satisfaction. But that feeling had quickly given way to a deeper, more sustainable fulfillment. Watching our mission expand beyond what I alone could have accomplished. The most valuable currency isn't money, I told the attentive students. It's alignment, when your daily work reflects your core values, when your definition of success matches your definition of meaning. That alignment sustains you through inevitable setbacks and propels you forward when easier paths beckon. After the presentation, as students lined up to ask questions or share their startup ideas, my grandmother appeared at my side. "You've come full circle," she observed, watching the enthusiastic young women waiting to speak with me. From seeking validation to providing it for others. I smiled, recognizing the truth in her words. I never set out to be a role model. "The best ones never do," she replied wisely. "They're too busy building something meaningful to pose for the pedestal." Later that evening, at a small dinner gathering with my family, I witnessed another kind of transformation. My relatives, once dismissive of my little app thing, now engaged in thoughtful discussion about financial inclusion, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than polite obligation. My father raised his glass in a toast. To Olivia, who taught us all that success comes in many forms, and that the most meaningful kind creates pathways for others. As glasses clinked around the table, I realized that my greatest achievement wasn't building a company that sold for millions or securing a prestigious position at Tech Forward. It was demonstrating, to my family, to aspiring entrepreneurs, and perhaps most importantly, to myself, that true success transcends external metrics. It's found in the courage to define achievement on your own terms, in the resilience to build against conventional wisdom, in the integrity to align your work with your values, regardless of who understands or approves, and perhaps, most powerfully, in creating space for others to do the same, to imagine possibilities beyond prescribed paths, to pursue purpose alongside profit, to measure success not by comparison to others, but by impact on lives. The acquisition headlines had faded months ago, but Clarity's mission continued to expand, touching lives around the world. That was the headline that mattered most. Not the one that had once shocked my family at brunch, but the thousands being written daily in the lives of our users, our team, and now these scholarship recipients. As I looked around at my family, now proud supporters of a journey they once mocked, I understood the final lesson of my unconventional path. Sometimes the greatest validation comes not from proving others wrong, but from helping them see differently, expanding their understanding of what success can look like, what paths are worth taking, what legacies truly matter. And in that expanded vision, we all grow richer in the ways that count most. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload. From us.